Now, I have been discussing 4 fundamental attitudes that are found in the various religions of the world towards the human predicament. And as you see still on the blackboard, they are given to be 4 R's instead of the 3 R's. Repentance, opposite rebellion, and resignation, opposite reincarnation, the latter word being used in a special sense, not in the ordinary sense of rebirth, but of an affirmation of the human predicament, of getting with life. And this morning I discussed the attitude of repentance, the frame of mind in which it is felt that there is something profoundly wrong about being a self-conscious, isolated, individual human being. And I tried to show that when this attitude is carried to an extreme point, it results in your discovering that you are a total phony. And I said that the difficulty of the repentance attitude is that people don't carry it to an extreme point. And they use the attitude of repentance and the indulgence in punishment for whatever they think is wrong about themselves as a kind of lifestyle which assures you that you're in the right because you hurt and because you insist that you're wrong. I've sometimes suggested that the statement, "I am a sinner," is logically equivalent to the statement, quote, "this statement is false," unquote. Because you see, if that is a true statement, it's a false statement, and if it's a false statement, it's a true statement, and so on forever. And to say, "I am a sinner," is really the same thing, because it implies that the statement itself, since it is the statement of a sinner, is a sinful statement. And it's a trap called a double bind. And so I've often twitted my clergy friends about this, and to their great amusement, because the clergy aren't as bad as you might think, at least a good many of them. They have trouble in making it with their congregations. And they expect that their congregations will want the good old religion of wallowing in sins, because many congregations, I've found out, love to be scolded. And if you make everybody feel temporarily guilty, but also make each individual feel assured that everybody else is more guilty than he is, this is an extremely much sought-after emotional experience. But the point that I was making was that if you pursue this idea of being sinful, of being phony, of being insincere, to its ultimate point where you discover that all you do and all you are is a big act, then this raises the question, you see, of what is reality? What lies behind phoniness? And so then and there you have an initiatic experience, because it leads into the discovery that the Upanishads call Tattvamasi, that art thou, that the real you is not the isolated conscious ego. That is only a game being played all over the place by what there is. Tat in Sanskrit. And what there is coextensive with the whole cosmos and is the imperishable reality, and everyone is that. But the game, since we started on the premise that existence is a game, the game is hide and seek. The game is pretending that it's not so. We then move on, you see, to another possible response. Not repentance, but resignation. I quit the game. I won't play it. There are all sorts of ways of doing this. But basically, this is an aristocratic posture. You ordinary mortals, with all your desires and all your involvements, are deluded. You get attached to things. But there are a certain minority of us who are above it all. And we simply resign. We're not going to follow this. Now, this, as I say, is aristocratic, but it may be aristocratic in two ways. There's the aristocracy of the Hindu sannyasin, the people who are outside and above caste. And there's also the aristocracy of the actual aristocrat. I get so mixed up with my British and American pronunciation on this word. The aristocrat who comes on with the pose of always being bored, who has complete sang-froid, who is imperturbable. Keyserling's study of this mentality is marvelous in his book, Europe. The essay on Hungary portrays the type he calls the grand seigneur. And he always identified himself with this type, this role. The grand seigneur who cannot be fazed, who can always rise to the occasion under any social circumstances whatsoever, without trying to do so, or without apparently trying to do so. In other words, if he goes to the opera wearing blue jeans, he will somehow make it apparent that everybody else is improperly dressed. This is a very interesting type of person. You know, there was an essay written by someone whose name I can't remember in the Centennial Review, which contrasted the attitude to time of the aristocracy, the bourgeoisie, and the proletariat. They said the aristocrat lives in the past because his ancient forebears have achieved everything, and by the fact of his birth and his existence, he has nothing to strive for. And he somehow never need overdo it. He's always cool. The bourgeois, on the other hand, feels that it's necessary to arrive, and he's always striving for the future, whereas the aristocrat lives in the past. On the other hand, the proletarian lives in the present, because he doesn't care about his reputation, and he just lives. And so of the two, the bourgeois is the sucker. Because the poor bourgeois is always cheated. Because, well, it's going to come someday. See? You're going to get it. Even your money, when you pull it out of your pocket, says on it, promise to pay. Watch out for that. It's promises. And the bourgeoisie, you see, lives on promises. The whole economy, the United States being the great bourgeois country, is in a state of expectancy, of feeling happy, not on what you have, but on what is going to come. The aristocrat is happy on what has happened. These great achievements of the past, there's nothing left to do except sort of glory in it. proletarian wants it right now, see? And very often gets it. But the poor bourgeois, as my uncle once said, the poor have it given to them, the rich have it anyway, but the middle classes do without. So, both the aristocrat and the sannyasin have resigned. Now, the more interesting of the two types is, of course, the sannyasin, who resigns from the world game. Let me review for you the role of the sannyasin in Indian culture. You know there are 4 castes. The caste of priests or Brahmins, the caste of warriors and rulers called Kshatriya, the caste of merchants called Vaishya, and the caste of workers called Shudra. And to belong to a caste means that you are in the state called Grihastha, which is householder. That is to say, you are one who is involved in the world. You are engaged in what is called Loka Sangraha. And Loka means the world, Sangraha means upholding. Upholding the going on of the great illusion. And so you are playing for money, for position, for status, for success. And hoping above all that you can win. You can beat the game. But it's supposed in this same culture that every man who attains the age of 45 or so, who has now a grown son to take over his work, will quit the game, will resign. And so when you become at that age, you're supposed to move from the state of grihastha, householder, to vanaprastha, which means forest dweller. You give away all your possessions to your son, you change your name, you take off your clothes and go more or less naked, because you have abandoned status. So the sannyasin has no status. He is, however, respected in the culture for being an upper outcast, whereas the aborigines of the Indian peninsula are untouchables, the lower outcasts. And the upper outcast always mimics the lower. For example, Buddha had his disciples wear ochre robes because ochre robes were worn by convicts. So in the same way, if today in San Quentin they all wear blue jeans, of a special kind, pants and a kind of a blue denim jackets, this could well become the uniform of a new kind of sannyasin in the Western world, and to some extent this is happening.